Hey guys, Ben from Overland Garage, and today we're going to be talking about tires. Or if you're from Maine like me, we call it rubber. So stay tuned and let's talk about rubber. So you're looking at tires, trying to figure out what should I buy for a tire. Well, there are many things to consider when you buy tires. What's your purpose? Number one. What kind of terrain are you going to be traveling on? And is it going to be long distance, or is it going to be a short weekend trip? Off-roading possibly? Or is it going to be all highway and back roads? Some very good questions to consider. Maybe you're into drag racing or drifting. So the choices on tires are endless. The first tire I want to talk about is the mud terrain, because that's everybody's first tire they go to when they talk about a lifted truck or an overland vehicle. Well, that's a great tire, but the thing you have to consider is a mud tire is only good on off-road and really not a lot of on-road traction. So the compounds in that tire are really soft and make that tire really soft. So that tire is going to be really good at gripping things off-road like rocks and steep terrain and mud. And it's meant to be soft so it expels all of that mud and stuff from the tread. Now, though it's good off-road, it's not going to be good on-road. So if you're traveling down the highway with this tire for, I don't know, hundreds of miles, the more miles you put on that tire, the quicker that tread is just going to melt because it can't handle that amount of friction and heat. The second tire I want to talk about is an all-terrain. This is also a great tire, and this is actually probably what I'm going to go with on my truck. I have the treadwright tire right now, which is a mud terrain, and yes, it sounded like a great idea. Gotta go get a mud tire. The second I put that tire on, the thing makes so much noise it would probably make you fall asleep. And I've noticed a lot of chopping, and that's like a stair pattern in the tread. Now that is that's due to an alignment issue possibly, but more often than not it's putting a tire in the place that doesn't belong. I'm gonna go with the General Grabber ATX. Now you say, why a General tire? Well, I've done a lot of research. They still continue to back their tire with a 50,000 mile tread wear warranty in a 10-ply tire. And if you buy the Road Hazard, they will basically replace the tire for free if something should happen to it. Now, I'm going to be putting a lot of back road miles on it and highway miles eventually, and towing a trailer. I don't want to have, 9 mud tires, because I got a trailer with a spare and my truck with a spare. I don't want to have that many mud tires on that truck and trailer combination. I want something that's more versatile and good on and off road traction, but still quiet and a good daily driver tire. Now, you heard me mention the racing slick or the drifting tires. The reason I mention those is there are street tires, racing tires. Those are all good tires for your everyday driver. A street racing car, the reason they have a drag slip with no tread on it is because of the super soft compound that's super sticky and it grips the asphalt. Now, the other thing you want to consider is airing down these tires. You've seen a lot on these shows where people talk about airing down when off-roading. It's a good idea, but you got to consider when you air down the tires where you're doing it and why you're doing it. If you air down a tire and you're still on the highway, you're compromising your suspension, you're compromising your braking capability, and you're compromising the tire and potentially creating a dangerous environment. If you remember years ago, Ford Explorer had Firestone tires on it, and Firestone ended up buying customers tons of tires because they were convinced it was in the tire. And the problem was the air pressure was too low from the manufacturer to make the ride better. Yes, the ride was better, but it compromised the safety of the vehicle. So remember, when you're airing down your tires, you must air down in the appropriate location, and you must air back up before you get back on the highway or even any road. That's an off-road use only thing. I haven't really aired down my tires that much. I haven't needed to. I've been only on very mild terrain. That's another reason why I don't need the mud tires. If you're on mild terrain, Maine has a lot of camping roads. They're not real aggressive terrain areas. You don't need a mud tire. I'm probably going to stick with an all-terrain just because they're a little less expensive, they're quiet, and they have a tread wear warranty, and they're just an all-around easy. You can get this all-terrain tire at any tire place. That's another thing you should consider when you're buying tires. If you should blow a tire, yes, you should have a spare, but two, can you get one easily? Because you might be out in the middle of nowhere and you lost both spares. You got a spare that's blown and a tire that's blown. Now what? You're gonna have to try to find a tire. So these are some things to consider when you're off-roading with tires. And finally, the last thing to think about is your spare tire. You need to make sure and check with anything like tire maintenance, car maintenance. You do your oil changes regularly. That's a preventative maintenance. Well, with a spare tire, you want to check that periodically, because in colder temperatures, those tires will lose air every month that tire sits on that vehicle without being used. And because what happens is hot and cold, friction warms the tire up, and then the cold brings the air pressure back down. So that's why you have a cold air inflation. And one more thing I'm going to talk about. The other thing I would like to talk about is tire sizing. Now you see these trucks and people are like, "Oh, I got my 37s." Well, the problem with this theory is the higher you go, in theory, the wider you need to go. In my application, I wanted to stick with something close to a 33-inch tire because I wanted to keep the original ride height basically to where it was before I made the truck longer. I didn't want a 37-inch tire. Yes, it looks cool, but I need that truck to be lifted enough to get over terrain, but low enough to stay under trees and obstacles. So I went with a 285 75/16. That's a standard size commercial truck tire. It's a 32.8 if you do the numbers, and it's about 10.5 to 11 inches wide. And so yeah, it's close to a 33, but it still gets the job done and doesn't compromise the handling and stability of the vehicle. Now the size I went with is 285 75/16, and those numbers mean the first number is 285, and that is the diameter of the tire in millimeters. 65 is a percentage. They call this an aspect ratio. That is a percentage of the sidewall and the width of the tire. So it's the height of the sidewall to the width of the tire, and that's how you get that percentage. And then 16 is a size of the rim, and sometimes you'll see an R in there as well, and that means it's a radial tire, so it has steel belted radials inside of it. And that's a ply. They used to use plies back in the day, and it would be like one layer of rubber, a layer of steel, a layer of rubber, and that's how you could determine what the tire was based on the plies. Nowadays they're made out of nylon cord, and you'll see that right on the tire, but it's not so much. Like a 10-ply tire used to be rated for 10 plies. Now it's more or less just a solid compound that makes that. Anyways, so that's the size I went with. Now the other numbers that you have to consider is there is a speed rating, and that is what that tire can handle for a speed. That number creates a speed. There's a chart that you go by. Mine would be like an H. That would be like an 80-something mile an hour tire. That's what that tire can handle with the air in it at that speed. And then you also have a load rating. Now this is important because if you have a vehicle that requires a 10-ply tire, also known as load range E, and you put a tire on that is not load range E, then you will be violating the law, and you could be in trouble for a state inspection. Being a state inspection mechanic, I know that you can always go greater than the load capacity on the tire, but you cannot go below that. Now, sometimes you might want to just stick with what the manufacturer recommends. They did the engineering, they did the research, they know why that tire belongs on that vehicle. So when you're picking out tires, pay attention to those numbers and letters, because that stuff makes a big deal. Just because the tire looks cool and it's bigger doesn't mean you're going to be safer. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, like and subscribe, and definitely put some comments down there, because hey, tires are a big subject and there's a lot to learn about it. So thank you for watching. This is Overland Garage.